Hello dear viewers, sit a while and listen, as I regale you with my thoughts on the classic video game Diablo. Diablo is an isometric, two-dimensional action role-playing game developed by Blizzard North and published by Blizzard in 1997. Before we get into the nitty-gritty, if I may, can I please request that if you enjoyed today's or any other of my videos, that you might leave a like, subscribe and or perhaps leave a comment with your thoughts on this venerable title. So, where to begin? Well, at the start I guess, and this game is certainly the start of that classic series that is Diablo. Before the vastness of later games with jungles and deserts and caverns and pandemonium and running, there was a little game set in the village of Tristram. This was not on the scale of things to come, and perhaps that of the designer's wonder itself. Just a small game set in a small little part of the world. Under a cathedral we must tread, to fight the legions of evil and dread, save the world, strike a last blow, prepare for danger, and die a blow. Some people say this is a series that started off the whole loot-chasing, isometric, action role-playing game thing, and perhaps they are right. Certainly, it was the one that garnered a lot of attention. Perhaps what this game begun was later refined and much venerated in Diablo 2, but we are not here to talk about the second one, we are here to discuss the first, the original. If you're unsure as to exactly what this game is about, then let me tell you, dear viewers. In this here video game, you take on the role of a hero come to investigate the strange goings-on in the village of Tristram, and the odd tales of what goes on under the cathedral. You are tasked with entering said cathedral to do battle with whatever clattering undead or evil hellspawn is pitted against you. As you progress deeper into this nightmare, you will find powerful weapons and equipment, grow in your own prowess, and perhaps lose a little of your humanity along the way. Diablo has a wonderful start menu. You can play single player should you fancy, multiplayer should you wish to play with others. Replay the intro because it's wonderful. Show those credits to credits those that have made the game. And lastly, you can exit. As mentioned, the game is isometric in the two dimensions in a wonderful pixel style. The game world exists in two fashions. The quiet village of Tristram, consisting of the villages themselves and their various abodes, along with an inn and a fountain. The second of which is the various levels of doom below the cathedral. You will be moving between them constantly. The village looks perhaps like any other village in the land, with thatched buildings and chimneys and villagers and a town square. It is simple and usual looking. Nothing particularly out of the ordinary, perhaps except for the missing sign from the inn and the strange witch that lives out across the river. Of course, if you knew what lay under the village, you might not think it so unassuming, for Tristram provides useful foil to the other aspects of the game, the underneath of the cathedral and all the horrors hiding within. Under the village are levels full of monsters, reaching deeper and deeper into the abyss, with the design reflecting this. Whereas Tristram is fairly bright, the levels below are dark, with dark shadows and perilous encounters behind every corner. Your character, and those of the various townsfolk and creatures of evil, are all hand-drawn sprites seemingly capable of 8 directions of movement and animated justly. There is a great variation in the monsters that appear, with more nasty-looking creatures becoming more apparent the deeper towards hell that you go. The resolution of the sprites is obviously telling of the era the game was created in, but I think they are still reasonable and definitely have their own charm to them. After staring at it a while, you do get used to it, so much so that when you flip back to the desktop or another game, everything looks amazing. Lastly, concerning the graphics, I should mention the UI. It is quite large and takes up a decent portion of the screen. It would be nice to reduce this and have more game world on the screen, but it was a fairly normal thing for games back then, with further versions of Diablo having a more compact and succinct UI. The audio in any game is vital for creating atmosphere, and with both the ambient music and the sounds of whatever is going on the screen. For a game this atmospheric though, the mood has to be set just right. That you are on an intrepid adventure embarking on a seemingly impossible and tragic quest to drive back the very forces of hell and defeat the primeval himself. Well, Diablo does a stunning job of it. The music is eerie and dark and becomes even more so as you progress lower and lower beneath the cathedral. There are strange wailing guitars, doomful drums, and dark evil sounding tones that lather the game with an audio backdrop capable of instilling fear and trepidation in even the most stoic and determined hero. It is really good stuff. The various sounds of combat, the clanging of sword or monster, steel or bone, provide decent feedback as you might hope. There are a few hiccups now and then when sound's not firing properly, when animations go a bit wonky, but we'll let them off. All the NPCs in Tristram, the villagers, they are fully voiced and nicely done so. The voice of each of them befits their situation well, with the drunk sounding beset by terrible memories, eager to drown them out with drink, or Deckard Cain sounding wise and all-knowing. Certainly the tales they tell of the goings-on in and around the village really help to drive forward the menace of the situation. You begin the game by selecting from one of three hero types: warrior, rogue and sorcerer. Sadly, no dwarf is seen here. If there was, of course, this whole Lord of Hell situation would have been resolved in no time at all. Each of the classes are focused on different styles of combat, with the warrior focusing on smacking things with vigour in melee combat, the rogue making use of a bow to rain down arrows upon thy foe from afar, and the sorcerer who uses esoteric magics to combat the threat of evil. This is not to say the barbarian couldn't cast fireballs and such, but they are much more suited to swinging blades than slinging magic. This leads on to skills and spells. There are no skill trees that you might encounter in later Diablo games. Instead, the character sheet simply states our basic attributes and combat stats like chance to hit and armor class. The basic stats are strength, which affects melee damage, dexterity, which affects chance to hit, armor and chance to block, magic, which increases your mana pool and spell damage, and vitality that increases your health pool. Each time the player gains a level through violence against the forces of hell, they will gain 5 attribute points, which you are free to distribute between them as you see fit. Beside the basic stats are spells. These are not selected when you level up, but rather take the form of spellbooks that you'll come across as you play the game, either from monster drops or pedestals and bookshelves. For any spell, there is a minimum level of magic skill to learn its power. If you have the right magic level, you can right-click the book and learn the spell. Further books found will increase the rank of said spell. To use a spell, you must assign it to the right click on your mouse. You can seemingly only use one spell at a time. Besides the stats and spells, there is of course equipment. There are several slots on your character that you can fill, from helmets and armour to jewellery like rings and an amulet. Lastly, of course, are the slots for the weapons. Equipment, in all its forms, can drop from monsters as you battle the forces of hell. It appears the more powerful equipment drops the deeper you go into the labyrinth. To equip some of these items, you may need to have a certain level of strength or dexterity, so you need to be mindful of your stats when you're looking at gear. Besides hoping for drops, you can also visit some of the vendor NPCs in the village, such as the blacksmith Griswold or Adria the witch. These characters have basic items for sale, but also some special and powerful items. It is worth checking them when you can, as you might find that sweet armour piece or decent weapon to supplement your loot finding. Along with his wares for sale, Griswold, being a blacksmith, is able to repair your gear, for gear has durability in Diablo. Smacking things with your weapon and taking hits from monsters will degrade the durability of your items. Should they ever reach 0, they will fall to dust and be lost, so make sure to repair them whenever you return to the overworld. So, overall gameplay. I wasn't sure how I was going to feel when playing this. Perhaps I had a bit of a notion that the game might feel dated and slow, and in one way of course it is, but I actually enjoyed the game a lot. You move your character around the screen, using the mouse while left-clicking monsters to swing your weapon at. Should you have any spells, you can cast them using the right mouse button. Moving around is a bit sluggish, especially as our brave hero has apparently never learnt how to run, so you will shuffle resolutely through the level at a conservative speed. This is a little frustrating, especially if you need to cross the level at any decent pace or move around the town. I guess this is why they added the running feature in Diablo 2. It isn't a deal breaker, but more of a sign of the time this game was created. Combat, for the warrior at least, was very much clicking monsters to death while soaking up hits or moving away should you get surrounded. And being surrounded is not good, as it can lock you in position with all the baddies swinging at you, interrupting all of your own weapon swings and overwhelming you with sheer numbers. I used a two-handed weapon for large portions of the game, so I could do some big hits, but I took a lot of damage. Later on, I mostly use a sword and shield. The combat isn't particularly enthralling, and I can imagine someone getting bored of it, but I still enjoyed clicking stuff to death while spamming pots or the heal spell, and of course running away heroically from overwhelming numbers of evilry. The main game loop, for me at least, involves stocking up on pots on the healer, pairing my gear after selling or equipping new items, before descending down into the labyrinth. Once I had run out of pots and or space in my bags, I would use a Staff of Town portal to quickly teleport back to town and do the cycle all over again. The gameplay is monster killing and loot chasing in its most basic form. Before the Diablo 2s, the Grim Dawns and the Path of Exiles of the world added all the layers of complexity to proceedings. I was somewhat surprised at just how much I enjoyed playing the game, always on the lookout for some new items or eager to see the next level or uncover more lore from some of the NPCs. I think the gameplay is fun and interesting, even if you could justifiably label it as simple. Perhaps I should play it again with the sorcerer and experience the world of wizardry, as I again take on those forces of hell. Overall, if you're into the genre this game may well have started, it is worth doing a playthrough to see how it all began. It isn't going to take ages to complete, so it won't take up your entire life, and I think you will get some enjoyment out of it. The mood of the game is still very strong even all these years later. The atmosphere is dark and sinister as you would expect, and the 20 plus years since its development hasn't taken the shine off of it. As I've said, it is fairly simple gameplay, but it is still fun and can be rewarding if you enjoy the genre. Perhaps if you aren't a big fan of the isometric action role-playing game, then maybe this won't be for you due to some of the more dated elements of the game. But if you played this back in the day or are a fan of the series, then Diablo is well worth taking a look at. The game is quite cheap on GOG, who partnered with Blizzard to release the game in higher resolutions, along with the expansion Hellfire. It ran perfectly on my Windows 10 machine, so hopefully it will work on yours too. And there we are, dear viewers, another video about another game. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you're doing well. Goodbye, and I will see you next time.